In this video, I'm going to talk about the reality of working as a hobbyist animator. This video is the third in a small series I have made about career paths in animation. I'll just be talking about it whilst some of my screen recordings play, so feel free to just listen to this as audio. You won't miss much with the visuals. The following is advice for adults, people who are now out of the education system. I will get into talking about students at the end or near the end of the video, but know that if you're still in the education system and you aren't due to graduate anytime soon, I'm not addressing these points to you, but they should still be helpful for when you're considering this for the future. Honestly, making animations as a hobby on the side, it really isn't so bad from what I can tell. It can be a really nice activity to do as a hobby, but I think I just need to set your expectations and give you a realistic view based on what I know from friends and my own experiences. There are good and bad aspects, and we're going to start with the downsides and then end on the nicer aspects, so it's nice and positive for the ending of the video. So let's get this out of the way. You won't make a lot of animation by being a hobbyist. And I'm not saying this to discourage you, I'm saying this so that you can manage your expectations, prepare, and adapt. If you aren't prepared for this reality, it could come as a pretty unpleasant hit to your morale, and we don't want you to quit or anything, so it's best that you just know that before you get into it. I came to this statement by paying close attention to who is actually putting out animations. There are quite a few really great hobbyist animators who have chosen to not pursue animation as a full-on career, and I respect them a lot, but they don't bring out a lot of animations. It takes them a long time to finish an animation. There are many reasons for that. I won't get into it too deep, but when we look at an average work week, the main things that are going to take up time is the number one thing that's going to take up time is sleep, and that's mandatory for everyone. Number two is working in your job, earning money so you can, pay the bills and just keep yourself sustained. And number three is cooking, preparing, and eating food. Together, these top three take up the majority of your time in your day-to-day life, I think, unless you're the exception to this. As well as that, other things which typically take up time, like commuting to work, family, exercise, personal relationships, maybe you have pets you need to take care of. And so these are all things that, if you're a hobbyist animator, these are all things that aren't doing your activity of animation. The animation process requires long stretches of deep concentration. Most people, to reach the optimum level of work for animation, you need to clear spaces of multiple hours in order to make any meaningful progress with an animation. You can chip away at it over time, putting in half an hour here or there, but it's not an optimal way to work. And to me, just the idea of putting in half an hour here and there, that sounds like hell. It can take considerable time to get into flow state, and if you're only doing half an hour, you'll be breaking yourself out of flow state so often, and it's just really not an efficient way to work. Even if you're a freak of nature who doesn't need sleep and is able to make a lot of animation on the side, you would always have been able to do more if you were a full-time animator. So you got to kind of live with that fact if you're a hobbyist, or if you choose to be a hobbyist. So let's get back to the statement. You won't make a lot of animation by being a hobbyist. What does that statement entail? What are some of the obstacles that come with this, and how can we overcome them? Well, here are some ideas that I thought up. Number one, it is harder for your morale, as you will likely improve at a slower rate and you'll have less to show for yourself each year. So I think it's just important to come in with that expectation so that you're not put off by that. To also plan for it and expect it, really. Number two, you should choose carefully what you animate, because it will take a long time. Only make something you really want to make, and make sure it's something you enjoy. After all, it is your hobby, so it should be fun. And the idea is that you don't want to be put off to the point of quitting. Number 3, if you desperately want to improve fast and make lots of animation, you won't be satisfied with making only a small amount of footage per year. Consider pursuing it as a career instead of a hobby, at least for a time in your life. That way you can justifiably spend most of your waking hours working on your craft, because it will be taking the place of your job. So then you'll be doing 2 of your tasks at once. You'll be working on your craft, learning skills at a fast rate, and earning money at the same time. Much more efficient. It doesn't need to be permanent either. I know that careers, when you think of careers, you think of being locked into the same line of work for, decades of your life, but it doesn't need to be permanent. If you have future plans, you can change back later. You can change to another career path. As long as you are investing in your education, you're keeping your skills up, and you're on top of things, then there's no reason why you can't try it out for a certain period of time in your life. That's actually what I did. Between college and university, I took a trial year of freelancing in animation, and I figured if I hated it by the end of the year, then I would know it wouldn't be the right career for me, and if I loved it by the end, I knew it would. So that was like a trial year, and you can try that. Number 4, you have to be extra disciplined with your lifestyle if you want to do independent animation as a hobby. Ideally, weekends are going to be your best stretch of time to work on your passion projects. So make sure you keep your schedule and daily routine organized so that there's nothing holding you back when that weekend comes around. Number 5, I recommend favoring a style which is less time consuming. There are all kinds of time saving stylistic decisions you can make in your pipeline which should make the process more stripped down. Styles like using a minimum color palette or just bare outlines, limited movement of characters, reusable assets. These stylistic choices will allow you to produce more animation over time and maybe even improve at a faster rate, because you won't be spending that precious time you have on repetitive tasks like coloring and in-betweening, where you're not really learning any new skills. For this extra part, I just want to talk about the accessibility of a professional career. To a lot of people, a professional career is actually not accessible to them yet, and so they're kind of hobbyist animators, but not by choice. It takes a lot of time to raise skills to a level where people want to hire you. You have to invest a lot in order to get to that stage. And if you're from a low income background or you don't have money saved up, then you need money now, not 2 years from today or even 2 months from today. No, you need the money right now to pay the bills, to put food on the table. And this makes it very hard to dedicate time to learning the craft of animation if you can't make an instant turnaround by working for clients. And really, I have no easy answer for this. It is far from being an animation problem. This is like a world problem. People from low income backgrounds have a much harder time accessing certain jobs which require a long investment in education. And really, the only thing I can recommend in these circumstances is to do whatever you can to pay the bills in the beginning. Make that your priority. And then further than that, be patient, play the long game and invest in your skill set wherever you can. Make use of the internet as well. There are a lot of free resources out there which can act as a substitute for an expensive institutional education. I will link a few of those examples in the description. There are lots of great channels out there, great websites. Things like New Masters Academy is a great online resource. It's not free, but it is very low cost compared to conventional education. Now, another extra section I wanted to put on here is for students and youths. I know there are a lot of students who watch my videos, and for people who are still in education, a lot of what I've said here doesn't fully apply because you don't have the same responsibilities when you're a kid in school. I think your school years should be used to pursue whatever interests you have, and I wouldn't worry too much about the career prospects of anything until you're approaching the end of your time in education. If I look back at my time in school, I spent a lot of time just doing things which had no real purpose, at least that's what it seemed. Things which were just fun, and I don't regret any of them for a second. I tried things like archery, sailing, camping, skateboarding, all sorts of stuff, and for a while I did game design, and I valued game design just as much as animation in the beginning. And these are all important. They aren't skills that I use in my day-to-day life. There's no practical reason, but that's the whole thing about doing them. Outside of school hours, you have the freedom to do whatever you like, and it doesn't need to mean anything. And that could be one of the only times in your life when things are like that, when you have that freedom. So make the most of it, and just do what you like to do in school, and do what you want to do what interests you. So yeah, for people who are doing animation in school, the only reason you should give up is if you are replacing it with something you're even more passionate about. Don't ever give up something because your friends don't think it's cool. Do you know what the coolest thing is? The coolest thing is you confidently doing your thing and not giving a damn about what other people think about it. That's actually cool. Also, remember that students have some of the longest holidays, so make use of that time in your summer holidays. Set out to make a full animation during that summer break. Here's another note about kids and education. When I was young, I remember getting quite a bit of resistance from my parents. I realized that it was because my parents thought that I was spending all my time on my computer playing games, when actually I was making animations. And once I explained to them that I was making animations, they understood that this wasn't an idle activity. Making an original animated film is some of the most stimulating mental exercise out there, and as a result, you build important skills which can help you in a multitude of careers and disciplines. So if you get resistance from your parents or teachers, make sure to help them to understand that this isn't just a game. It's serious business. So now that the negatives are out of the way, we can look at some of the great benefits of being a hobbyist animator. And these are things that aren't necessarily the case in being a professional animator either. Of course, a lot of these are written from the point of view of a professional animator, seeing what isn't the case with being a professional that you can have with being a hobbyist. So it frees you up to make your animations about whatever you like. You can make your own creative decisions without consequence. There's no one to answer to, so there might well be less anxiety around making artwork. There's no one to please but yourself. If you're a very anxious person, and if pressure gets to you easily, it's something to consider being a hobbyist. It might take a lot of the pressure off for you. There's no set deadline either, so it's ready when you say it's ready. You can publish it when you feel like it, and there's no pressure from a deadline, which is what you have in professional animation. And there's no commitment to keep making animations. You can come back to it whenever you like. You can go through a phase of binge producing and then take a break for a while instead of constantly producing in a routine. And whilst I don't do this with animation, it is something that I do as a hobby with my music production. When I produce music, I tend to just do it whenever I feel like it, and I take long breaks from making music, and then I just come back to it, and that does feel quite nice. If you like animation, but you don't love animation yet, then a hobby is a good option, so you can just dip your feet in to whatever amount you want. A lot of people think that you need to be great at animation to enjoy it, and I don't think that's true. You don't need to be great at animation to enjoy it. A beginner can start enjoying animation the first day they start. You can draw a bouncing ball or a stick man or any of those other really quick things which are very quick to pick up, and it's a lot of fun. It's starting from the very beginning. So that means that, it's very important to encourage positive mindset around hobbyist animation. It's actually very rare these days that you get a professional animator who didn't start out at some point as trying it out as a hobby, because what do you seriously go into as a full-on career before you've even tried it? So doing animation as a hobby is really important, and that's kind of the gateway into doing it as a full-on career option, or from making a whole business out of it. So this is my conclusion. I really don't want the message of this video to be choose a career in animation. It could well be that by persuading someone this, I would actually cause them to make an impulsive decision they could regret later. I'm also not trying to say that having animation as a casual hobby is pointless. It certainly isn't. So my concluding message, what I urge people to do, is to pursue a career in what they have crazy passion for. Unless your passion is drugs, please don't become a drug dealer. You are of better service to humanity by professionally doing what you enjoy doing. So if you aren't crazy passionate about animation, just do it as a hobby and focus on that other thing you're most passionate about as your main source of income. And if it ever becomes the other way around, where animation does become the thing you're most passionate about, and your current career, you're not quite as passionate about it, then consider switching careers. Like, could you actually transition into a career as an animator? And see if that's possible and try it out. But that's really what I'm saying, is just do whatever you're most passionate about and try and maximize the amount of time you spend doing that thing. Here's an additional note. Even if you are a professional animator, it can be really good to have a passion project on the side, as this can act as a sort of outlet for any unfulfilled creative ambitions from your work. If that is something you struggle with, which I think most professional artists tend to if they're doing mostly commercial work. Also, whatever you make as a passion project, as a hobby, is yours by right. This means that whenever you make something without someone else's funding, it's your asset. And let's say you develop an idea which becomes a concept for a feature film, and you do this in your spare time. Well, that's 100% yours, and that could turn into a lot of profit in the future. So it will come back to help you later. So I think that independent productions are very useful and very important. So I would certainly encourage hobbyist animators to create independent productions, but also for professional animators to do something independently on the side as a kind of hobby. And to give you an example of this, I'm working with one of my friends on making a music video which combines 2D animation and live action footage in some interesting ways that we haven't tried before, and it's really cool to experiment with that, and also to have the challenge of shooting live action footage as well, because it's something we haven't done at that scale before, where we have to actually set up lighting and consider hiring actors and casting actors. So that's an example of what I mean by a passion project, and by the end of that we're going to have this original work of art to our name, and that should really help us. Some of the most unique animation out there has been done independently. Some types of animation are too risky for people to financially back, and so they don't have any commercial appeal. But it's these animations, when they are taken to completion by hobbyists, it's these ones that can have a very big impact on the world of animation, and that often disrupt the status quo of what people perceive animations to be, because they can really do something unique. They can explore something very adventurous, something really out there with no consequence, really. And there's no financier to reel them in. There's no producer telling them that the client isn't gonna like this, the client wants something that looks like these things which have already been made. There's none of that. So it is possible that through having this independent approach to animation, and by independent I mean projects which are self-funded, self-started, made by volunteers or a volunteer, someone who's just working on it for nothing up front. Those animations have a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential in them to do something really, really interesting. And you know, when you make something which is original, which is different from the things around it, that is how animation as a medium grows, adapts, changes over time, and remains interesting. So like I said, this has been the third video in a series that I've been doing. I've already made 2 other episodes, the reality of working as a freelance animator and the reality of working as a studio animator. So make sure to watch them after this to give yourself a well-rounded understanding of where I'm coming from with this. I also have a Patreon page if you want to support the videos I'm making on this channel. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and watch the other videos that I've made. I've made plenty of other videos that can help you out. Alright, see you in the next video. Goodbye.